Welcome back to House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Vic the Producer, and joining me as always is Gilbert Manzano, who does it for Sports Illustrated MMQB. Gilbert, the NFL draft is finally over. We can finally talk about all the selections, six selections that the Rams made. We'll get into all that. Plus, we'll get into what it means for the Rams to have an extra pick or extra first round pick in 2026. So we'll get into all that, but how are you, sir? How long was the whole draft going from Thursday to Saturday for you?
Ooh, it felt pretty long this year, but hey, we got through it. It's a 3-day marathon, and the hardest part is kind of trying to keep track of all 32 teams. And I think the way we did it at SI, we were focused a lot on the first 2 days. I would have probably, I don't know what to do. Maybe I would have, quit my job if I'd have focused on all the day three picks. But the first 2 days, a lot of player grades, and then the last day, what we do, which is I like the change of pace. We focus on the overall draft classes, and for me, I got the NFC. So people, if you checked out the story at SI, you might not like my overall grade for the Rams, but also I'm glad that we're here on House of Horns to break it down. Why I wasn't too happy about the overall draft class, but I do like some of the players that they chose, so it's not too negative here.
Yeah, no, I have a lot of things that I kind of want to talk about, and I'm glad you're here because I have a lot of questions with this draft, Gilbert. I have a lot
Hmm.
of questions with this roster. Like, I understand that the NFC, in terms, it might be top heavy at this point going into the offseason, or as we continue during the off season. And so I have a lot of questions that I wasn't, I'll be honest, I wasn't, I guess, satisfied with some of the answers that I heard from Sean McVay and Les Need. So I think a lot of people are kind of might turn on me this year because I like I said, I'm very skeptical in terms of what I've seen so far from the off season in terms of free agency and also the draft. So let's get into it. Let's start off with our engagement question, Gilbert, and part of it too, just kind of getting into it is the fact that they didn't draft a secondary player. They didn't draft a cornerback, which is a big need for this team. I understand they got ran all over by Saquon Barkley and the Philadelphia Eagles, but cornerback is still an issue. So why don't you let the people know what our engagement question of the week is, or for
Yeah.
this week?
Yeah. Let us know here for the engagement question of the week. What's your response? What's your answer? And as you know, there's a connection to Jalen Ramsey, the former LA Ram who won a Super Bowl in 2021, got traded to LA in 2019. And then he went to the Miami Dolphins at the start of the 2023 season, was there for 2 years, or he's still technically there, but he's on the trading block right now. So the question is, should the Rams trade for Ramsey again after not drafting a cornerback, safety? Like Victor said, they did not focus in the secondary for the NFL draft here. So you want Ramsey back? Let us know in the comments. Quick thoughts for me. I say no. It's never a good idea, at least for me, to go back to an older player, especially a player that you cut to start this new era of getting younger, keeping first round picks, or I guess you got rid of one, or gaining first round picks. You prioritize the draft, and it started when Ramsey got let go and he went to Miami there in the trade. But to me, it wouldn't really make sense. It depends on the contract too, so you don't know about that. If he plays for cheap, maybe it works out, but I doubt it with Jalen Ramsey.
Yeah, and I mean, I understand that he's looked at as a veteran guy. You need some veteran guys to come in, but at what price? And I get you're all in, but it's good to have more than just one player like Ramsey. We don't know how good he can be in terms of playing on the outside. Would he be playing in the ins on, playing in the slot? Would he be playing safety? Who knows? I have a like I said, I have a lot of questions in terms of what they're doing with this roster. So I mean, I just the fact that they didn't go and get a defensive back in this draft was a bit of a head scratcher. But Gilbert, let's go ahead and start. You talked about you were in charge of the NFC for Sports Illustrated. You said people are not going to be happy with the draft grade that you gave the Rams. So let's start off the first round. they trade out of that number 26 pick. Like for me, I thought it was a good trade out. I thought that was I even said in the show that we had that the best case scenario for the Rams would be to trade out. Now the
Mhm.
reason I said that was, hey, you get a bunch of picks, you feel more you get more cracks at, being able to select players, whether it's in the secondary and you go at it by fixing your defense, right? Well, the Atlanta Falcons come in and they offer you a first round pick, and then you trade it, and then you get their second round pick. So, how do you want to do this? Do you want to start off with the picks, or do you want to go off of what happened in the first round?
Yeah, let's go with the pick, and then we'll go with the first selection, Ferguson, because I guess the draft pick was the first thing that happened in the NFL draft. So it kind of dictated their draft class here. So why not? And I'm sure Leslie was probably thinking like, I'm gonna toss it. I'm gonna just say, would you trade? Would you trade for the number 26 pick this year if you give us your future first rounder, just to see what would they say? And when they said, "Yeah, we'll do it," he probably was doing a fist bump or telling Sean McVay they're gonna go for it. And it seemed like a robbery at first, and it's a good trade, and I actually like it from both sides because, as you know, Victor, I'm high on
Yeah,
James Pierce Jr. So for the Falcons, it made sense. I don't know to the extent of the riskiness there. It reminds me a little bit of when the Rams said, all right, Braden Fisk, that's our guy. You want a second round pick? All right, F it, why not? Maybe not the
yeah,
same because one's a first rounder, then one's a second rounded. But getting back to the point for the Rams, I think you had to take that trade because it was a lot of good picks there. But then to me, it was kind of like, all right, what do you do with the second round pick? What do you do with the third round pick? Can you still get the players to help you this year? And this is where I didn't like the draft class, Vic. It felt like they thought there were two players away from winning the Super Bowl this year. Puna for Devontae Adams. I'm like, that's it. I'll tell the players you think that can help you win the Super Bowl this year. To
yeah,
me, they had more holes than Devontae Adams and Puna Ford. I wanted to see more players in this draft, 2025, help out the roster this year. Linebacker, cornerback, even offensive line. These positions were very neglected from Leslie. So to me, I think they overrated their roster that's going into 2025. It's a good roster. Don't get me wrong. It's
yeah,
just, is it a roster to win the Super Bowl? They kind of still feel the same to me, Vic. So I thought, okay, get the first rounder. That's cool. No knock on that. That's an A plus in my book all day.
yep,
But then when it came to fixing this roster, I think they got a little, I don't know if I call it cocky or confident, or they put too much stock into, hey, we had a great draft in 23, a great draft in 24. Now we're able to be flexible and get some draft capital here to sustain the success for the long haul. I get it. You focus on the future, but to me, as we're going to get into right now, Victor, they did not get much better to me when you really break it down. But here's where I'll end in some positive note. And I give the whole class here. I gave the Rams a C at Sports Illustrated. We'll break down all the picks here, which I like they're going to do.
yeah.
But it's also kind of in the back of my mind. I should give Les Need and Sean McVay the benefit of the doubt. But right now, a couple of days away or removed from the draft, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me what they did.
Yeah, and I'm with you. Like I said, I have a lot of issues. Usually, I'm like very positive. I understand like less need, and that whole their scouting department has done a great job. Sean McVay, the way they've gone about it. I thought, I've even said that, hey, Les Need belongs on the same level as Howie Roseman with a lot of the moves that he's made. My issues here is the fact that I thought they would move out of 26 and be able to pick up stockpile a bunch of picks and be able to use those for this year, especially because you're saying that you're all in. Now, I already saw people starting to kind of project this 53-man roster, and then they're like, well, if they were gonna take on 7 and 9 more picks, where were they gonna go if you have a limited amount of space on your roster? Because a lot of these guys have, made the roster now, in your last two drafts. I get that, but at the same time, Gilbert, like your defense is still lacking defensive tackles. You also are lacking secondary help. Like I said, Malachi Stark was there for you to take. I understand that, hey, it's hard to pass up a first round pick To me, they're winners for that reason. In terms of, hey, you picked up an extra first round pick. Where I guess I'm with you here is the fact that you're deciding that, hey, 6 selections is good for us, and that'll be enough for us to contend this season for a Super Bowl. And I think I don't agree with that. And I'm just being honest about that. I just feel like and I get it. Look, we've seen guys, we're going to start seeing more guys be signed post the draft. We've already seen it today. So I understand that. But as of where I'm looking at this roster right now, I still have a lot of questions because they need to fill a lot of holes still, especially on defense.
Yeah, like going off what we just said, like if you're gonna rely on the veteran market and get kind of like the bottom of the barrel, I'm not saying Jalen Ramsey is part of that, but like if you're gonna okay, now that we didn't really focus on cornerback, we're gonna get some free agents here. Like what happened with Tre'Davious White last year? That didn't work out. So like, there's a reason why some of these players are available right now. They're just not that good anymore. And if you think you're gonna save them, good luck with that. But I just don't agree with the approach here. And you know, I'll say this: like I get they're both they're different GMs. They have different philosophies, but like Howie Roseman values linebackers. Like, why doesn't Les Snead value linebackers? One just won the damn Super Bowl. He's won 2 Super Bowls. He's been to the Super Bowl 3 times in the last, sorry, 2 times in the last 3 years. I guess Snead's been to Super Bowl twice. He won one. But I just don't get it. Like, you're hearing stories about Roseman calling everybody up, calling the Chargers, give us that pick. We want to get Campbell from Alabama, the best
Yeah.
off-ball linebacker, and Leslie doesn't care. Okay, I'm not gonna harp too much about it because you got the 2026 first rounder, but
Yeah.
and you let a lot of players go by from 26 to what was the number, Vic? 40
This
something.
is number
Uh,
46.
46. There was a lot of talent right there, and my colleague Albert Breer wrote today that the Rams were trying their best to get into the top 10. They
Yeah.
want offensive players. They don't really focus on defense. They wanted McMillan from Arizona. He went
Yep.
number
I heard that.
I think it was 8 to the Panthers. They
To the
wanted
Panthers. Yep.
one of the tight ends, Tyler Warren. They wanted Costa Loveland. And when I think they even wanted Omarion Hampton from North Carolina. I think they wanted the Ohio State wide receiver who went to the Buccaneers. I'm blanking on the name. Mecker. I don't want to butcher his name. But all these weapons were gone by the time they got to number 26. So I get the trading down part, but then even like a pick, and maybe we could get into it this way. Why is Terrance Ferguson better than Elijah Arroyo? And then I started
Hmm.
thinking, is Ferguson a much better blocker for 11 personnel? And then I started reading, he's not even that good of a blocker. So I'm like, okay, I don't understand the thinking here. He was a 5th rated tight end. To me, it's just I think they overvalue their roster. They're not putting too much into the like. I get it. Like you were a play away from beating the Eagles, the Super Bowl champions. The Commanders got their butts whooped. The Chiefs got their butts whooped. But you still got gashed for 200 yards on the ground. To me,
Yeah.
that's just embarrassing. As much as getting dropped, or allowing 55 points like the freaking Commanders did. Why don't you focus on stopping the run? Is Poona Ford going to do that for you? Is Ty Hamilton from whatever the 5th round going to do it? I don't know, but to me, linebacker, cornerback, even offensive line, Vic, I have concerns there too. I think they just overvalued this roster because of the last 2 drafts.
Yeah, and we talked about it ad nauseum, especially with the linebacker crew. Like, I get it. You don't want to pay for it. I understand it. But at some point, like, you're spending a third round pick, a fourth round pick on positions like, and we'll get into the running back thing because that I even asked you as a joke, you know, during our pre-draft show, like, hey, is Leslie going to draft another running back? And I honestly, I should have just like phoned it in because at that point, I knew that was going to happen. But let's get in, like you said about Terrance Ferguson, and I don't want to just bash this draft just because I understand where they get the benefit of that. Like I said again, getting a first round pick is great because, hey, next season there's a lot to get into in terms of what they might do with it, and we'll get into it once we get through these selections in terms of what that means getting that first round pick. So in terms of as Terrance Ferguson, I've heard the same things as you said. Not a good blocker, a really good possession, kind of like in the mold of Loveland and Brock Bowers, which that's great, but he's not Brock Bowers, and that's the difference. There's a reason why they were trying to trade up for, you know, for those two first tight ends in Loveland and then Warren. And as I said, I understand. Like my biggest thing is when I'm trying to when people try to gaslight me is when I have a problem. And I heard this from McVay's boy Peter Schrager, and he said, "Well, they're looking. They wanted to trade back because they figured that the tight end would be there that they wanted." And I'm like, if they really wanted the tight end, that they wouldn't have traded back. I'm sorry, like you don't trade back to the second round if there was a tight end that you wanted. So I hate being gaslit in that way, but I hope this works out because they really do need, like, outside of Tyler Higbee, we saw the once Tyler Higbee came back, that offense just started churning. Like it, you could tell why Tyler Higbee was huge for this. When you have that 11 personnel and that tight end going, you can understand why they wanted a tight end. I just don't know if he's the type of guy that you wanted, because we've been saying like, hey, they need to start finding guys to replace a lot of these guys going forward now. A lot of the veterans.
Yeah, it's obvious that Sean McVay really wanted a weapon at the tight end position. So, if you felt very good about a deep class at tight end and it's not a reach pick, then okay, that's fine. And again, we got to give this crew of the benefit of the doubt for picking the right players. But, when all you're reading, or at least for me, Elijah Arroyo is probably the better athlete, the better pass catcher. Maybe not as good as a blocker as Ferguson. Maybe Sean McVay said, you know what? I could work with Ferguson. I could make that guy a good blocker, and eventually he'll be an every down player for me. I could
Yeah.
make that work. Maybe that's the reason here. But to me, I don't get why you don't go for Elijah Arroyo, who went to the rival Seattle Seahawks, by the way. And I love that pick for them. They needed that too. So I get it. It's a deep class. It's probably not a reach. It fits what you want. It fits a positional need too. That's an opening because Tyler Higbee is getting older, and you've tried addressing that with other players, and it just hasn't really worked out there. But to me, uh, you know, I kind of want to look. I had it. I forgot. But what players did you? What else did you pass on? And then
Yeah.
also, like, yeah,
I got
if you
I
wanna
got a
go,
couple.
go ahead and
Yeah.
tell me, like, again, I'm not gonna focus on the players from
Yeah.
26 to 46 because that's the first round pick, 2026.
Right.
That's very hard to refuse that offer, but all the players that might've came after that, that's where I'm probably scratching my head like, why not for a linebacker? Why not for a
Right.
tackle? Why not for an edge rusher? Why not for, cornerback? So to me, if Ferguson's your guy, go ahead and get him. I
Yep.
get it, but to me, if we're doing the grade on Ferguson, I think I had like a C plus the day of at SI. The more I think about it, I get it. That's your guy. I'll give you the benefit of that. I'll bump it up to a B minus. He sounds like a great pass catcher too. But to me, having Elijah Arroyo there too in the back of my head is kind of like, you should have gone that route. But what do I know? Sean McVay is a
Yeah.
better scout here. But then
Yep.
everything else you gave up to me kind of felt like you really wanted this guy. But was that really what the roster needed right now?
Yeah, and I think part of it too, I guess my frustration with this draft for the Rams is the fact that they said, well, they ended up trading up 3 times, right? Well, why couldn't you trade up in the second round to get, other guys
Good point.
that were better? Like there was the safety that the Seahawks traded
Hmm.
for that I really like for them, that would have been great for them. Like I that's the thing too. You want to get top 50 players. I just don't feel like Terrance Ferguson was a top 50 player that you could have gone and gotten. And you could have waited on as well. So that's part of my frustration here. But like I said, I think the thing that I keep going back to is the fact that they got a first round pick. So at the end of the day, but I go back to this. They're like, yeah, we looked at our roster and it just our roster is ready to compete this year. And I'm like, well, if that was the case, then trade up to try to go get, better players to fill those positions on defense. So like I said, it's a tale of two tribes for me for the Rams.
Yeah, I'll give you some of the names before and then some of the after ones. But if they keep that pick and they were content, like, a pick later, freaking Will Johnson from Michigan went to the Cardinals at 47. I get he has injury concern and maybe he wasn't for everybody, but that's could be a very good cornerback.
Especially when you play zone, and then that's the thing he's really well equipped to do. Is that's
And
what I'm saying.
and also another rival just say, we'll take that guy. You passed on him, Brown, so we'll
Yeah,
take him. So if he's healthy, you might be kicking yourself for that one. I already mentioned Arroyo. I really like Nick Scorton, the edge rusher from Texas A&M. He went to the Panthers, and I know edge rusher wasn't a big need, but I bring him up because they drafted an edge rusher the following round. So if you're still in the market for that, why not get somebody of that caliber too? Like again, top 50 player, like we were talking about with Victor mentioned right now.
yeah,
Uh, Benjamin Morrison, another kind of injury concern, but a very good player with first round talent, went to the Buccaneers at 53. I hear a lot of good things about this Charger wide receiver, Trey Harris. He went to 55. Ozzy Trapillo
yeah,
went to the Bears. I was a tackle from Boston College. I think they need a tackle. They need more players on the offensive line. So there's a bunch right there. It could probably keep going for before 26 to 46. How about the UCLA linebacker Schweizinger? Or am I saying that
yeah.
right? Yeah.
Carson
Uh,
Swensinger.
like you mentioned, the safety Nick Amenwari. So it's a bunch of talent that they passed on. Again, I get it. You want it to be complacent at 46. You still passed up on a bunch of names that I just mentioned right now. But that's a gamble, 26 to 46. Again, I won't harp on it too much, but even after that, it's kind of like, did you really get a top 50 player? Like you mentioned, Vic. To
Yeah.
me, it kind of felt like a little bit of a reach. At least to me, it did.
Yeah, and I think what's gonna save this draft class is the fact that they got that extra draft first round pick. Honestly, like at that point, I didn't care what they did going forward in terms of whether they were winners or not. The fact that you got a first round pick for next year from the Falcons, even let's say the Falcons win their division, which I think they will at this point, just because of like I like a lot of the things that the Falcons did outside of trading the first round pick, but I understood like, hey, they knew what their needs were. They were edge rushers. They were terrible at sacking the quarterback. So I understood why they went all in for it. And they have one of the things I always say is if you have a quarterback on a rookie deal, go and get them help. Don't wait. Like use your draft picks to continue to load up to make sure that you can go on a run. And so I really like the fact that the Rams got a first round pick, so it doesn't matter where it ends up because you can use that, and we'll talk about it later for what they can do next year. But just moving on here, Gilbert, their next selection was in the third round. They took outside linebacker Michigan from Michigan, Josiah Stewart, as you said. They ended up taking a guy they can move around in terms of whether he can put his hand down on the ground and rush the passer, or even uh, uh, he's probably pretty much going to fill the role left behind by Michael Hoyt.
Yeah, so I got no problem with that. It was a need right there, getting that fifth rusher or the cheetah player that they like to
Yep.
call it, cheetah player. But for me, for the grade, I'll give it like a C plus because he kind of reminds me of a Byron Young, like smaller edge rusher, but very fast, and to me, why
Twitchy.
don't yeah, Twitch you why don't you kinda go for, like, I know you wanna have a versatile group of pass rushers, and you kinda got the Hulk and the Bruiser and Jared Verser, but, to me, I don't why not something in the middle? Not the big muscle guy, and not the smaller guy who's fast, maybe somewhere in the middle, and to me, it felt like there were so many edge rushers in the class. You probably could have got something better in the second round, obviously, or in the third round. It kind of felt like a little bit of a reach to me as well, but he does fit that kind of Byron Young skill set. Maybe that's what they like there. I know. When Raheem Morris was there, they liked him a little bit taller, but obviously lean,
Hmm.
can bend very well, very athletic. They're kind of missing that a little bit, right? When they had their Leonard Floyd, somebody who's tall but a little bit lean. Like I mentioned, Jerry Verse is kind of the more of the ox, very strong guy, and Byron Young is more of the speed. Let me get around you a little bit. So Michael Holt kind of fit a little bit of that as
Yeah.
more of the power guy. You lose that a little bit. So we'll see what Stewart does. He comes from a very good program in Michigan where they have some great defensive players. So maybe again, benefit of the doubt with the Rams. That's something I'm going to keep harping on because they have you know they have their own scouting department. They trust it. They don't trust the internet. They don't trust these Daniel Jeremiah and Mel Kiper big boards. They do their own thing, and I really appreciate that they do that because that's you don't want to be copying people. So to me, that's the thing. But it kind of felt like uh, why not go for an offensive lineman, a cornerback? They didn't want to do that. I'm not going to knock a team for trying to make a strength even better. The more pass rushers you have, why not? But to me, what's the point if you have a bunch of edge rushers that can't set the edge, they can't stop the run, and why not get a beefy lineman in that third round instead of the fifth round? So to me, you could have focused on that too. So there are also pass rushers too. So they kept focusing on the edges here, and like we saw last year, what did the edges really do in terms of stopping the run against Saquon Barkley? To me, I felt like they settled. Maybe they view a big jump, and I'm not trying to be critical already of some guys in April, but like if you're supposed to be as good as you are, Kobe Turner and Braden Fisk, stop the damn run. Like they invested so much capital in you guys to stop the run, and you couldn't do it last year. They need to go sign Puna Ford. Uh, and maybe they're going to take a step in year 3 and year 2 to stop the run. But to me, it just doesn't make any sense that you have a front so talented and very good at getting to the
Yep.
quarterback. Why can't you stop the run? Why were you so bad stopping the run? So maybe they were expecting a big jump from a very young group.
Yeah, and that's part of not having good linebackers, Gilbert. I think that's part of it. And the fact that those two interior guys that you pointed out are pass rushing defensive tackles, you need guys that can set, that are able to stop the run. And that's why losing someone like Bobby Brown the third, I thought was huge. And I get it with the selection that they went with off from Ohio State, Ty Hamilton in the fifth round at pick 148. That's where it makes sense. But like one of the things that I told you that I thought was going to be a trendy thing in this draft was the fact that the defensive tackles were going to fly in the first 3 rounds. That's another
Yeah, true.
position that I would have liked for them to, go and take care of in the first 3 rounds because the one thing that this draft was going to give you, it wasn't top heavy. There wasn't a lot of guys that are going to be superstars in this league, but you were going to get plenty of starters, defensive tackle, running back, and maybe tight end was the other one that I kept hearing from the draft experts that you wanted to be able to kind of hone in on in the first 3 rounds.
Yeah, and that they could have done that with the second round pick, or get a defensive tackle. I know they went pretty fast and early. Maybe that was a thing there wasn't enough out there. I get that. It's just to me like they went for a pure pass rusher, the guy who's going to fit the cheater role, the guy who's going to come in for obvious passing downs. Like enough with that. You got enough of that. You got a bunch already.
Yeah.
Why don't you get somebody who's a little more physical, downhill, bigger, could take the wear and tear. I get it. He fits like the Byron Young role, and they got that very right with him a couple years ago. I think he was a third round pick too, right, Vic? Uh,
Yep.
so they know how to find them in the third round. But to me, it's like they already have that. And again, I'm not gonna knock a team making a strength and an even better strength because you can make that into an
Yep.
advantage on
I
game day
agree.
in several ways. But this team keeps operating like they're a couple players away, and you and I agree. I don't think they're that right now.
No, and not the way I'm looking at this roster, especially. I mean, look, you cannot. And that this is going to be a theme for me, and I'm going to continue to bring it up, Gilbert. You cannot start every year 1-4. I'm sorry, like
That's true.
eventually you need to get off to a quick start. And look, the one thing they'll have in their favor this season, Gilbert, is their schedule. They get to take on the AFC South. So, I mean, you're probably guaranteed going 3-1 in if you're facing that division. Outside of that, we'll see. This division is also has taken a step back around them, so we'll see what happens. But yeah, like that's the thing though. When they face those first place teams like the Eagles, maybe the Bucks, we saw what the Bucks can do. Um, and then the rest of the first place teams like the Texans that they'll face. Those are going to be the games that I'm gonna be eyeing because I want playing the other teams is not going to tell me much in terms of what this team is, and especially if they're a Super Bowl contender. Because, like we said, I get it. Like a lot of people always look back to what the last thing they saw from their team and never like this team is going to change and you just wish they continue to add. And so I think that's where we're both coming from is the fact that we kind of wish they would have added more to it, but they still have time. We saw the Eagles last season, and the reason I keep bringing them up is because they're the ones that won the Super Bowl, and we were just as critical about the Eagles during the last offseason, and they were able to hit on everything. They hit on their picks. with their first two picks in the draft. Then they went out in free agency and then signed Zach Vaughn. They also went and changed their coaches. So it all has to kind of come together. And there's still another phase of the offseason. Now you get to go and sign more free agents, and we'll see where they go. But like I said, they still have a lot of holes, and I think that was my biggest thing. And I'll bring it back to it that listening to that press conference with Leslie and McVay, I was just like, I guess you guys are way more confident in this roster than what we're both seeing here because I don't. There's still a lot to get improved, especially defensively. But moving on, Gilbert, as I said, here I'll put this because I love this. Where was it? Let me see if I can find yourself someone that loves you, like Leslie loves drafting running backs. Gilbert, with in their fourth round, the Rams drafted running back from Auburn. Gar, I I went and repeated it like three times before we hopped on, and I still can't say it. Harquez Hunter, um, which this now makes it that the Rams since 2018, and this is all thanks to AP reporter Gray Beecham, who you know very well. He's a B reporter for the Rams. He covers everything in LA, USC. He'll move around Lakers and Clippers. But he said that the Rams have drafted 8 running backs since 2018. John Kelly, Daryl Henderson, Cam Akers, Jake Funk, Kyron Williams, Zach Evans, who's the guy that we could never remember his name,
Mhm.
Blake Corum, and now Harquez Hunter. Gilbert, what was your grade on this pick?
Yeah, first of all, it's kind of so list. So maybe I should focus more on the list there. Kyron Williams a good player. Cam Akers was okay, and then Daryl Henderson was okay, but it's kind of a so list. But they're not like they're not like top first round picks, right? Like Todd Gurley was a couple years or many years ago. Now it feels like.
Yeah.
But for this player Hunter, I actually I'll give it a B here. I think the fourth round was a good place to get a running back, and a very a deep crop of running backs in this draft here. I get it's not really a big of a need, but also you're trying to get a contract done with Kyron Williams. You get a little bit of leverage there too, and then this might be a knock on last year, but Blake Corum hasn't done much. Is Blake Corum the guy? So you gave yourself another body, and then I think sorry, not Ferguson. Hunter has a different skill set than Corum and Kyron Williams. I think Kyron Williams and Corum are a little more, kind of the shifty running backs, a little, somewhat athletic. Not the biggest or not the fastest or the biggest running backs, but they're pretty shifty, play well between the tackles, but they're not a thumper. They're not a downhill kind of short yardage running back who could take the wear and tear. And from what I've been reading, Hunter has, good size. He's pretty built. Like he's one of these kind of buff guys that could just take a bunch of hits because he's just built that way. So if he does that, it helps you out in short yardage situation. Why not run the football a little more? They didn't really I thought they kind of took a step back last year. Maybe I'm wrong there because I haven't really thought about it in a minute. But the running game didn't feel as like effortless or as easy as the year before when they're really clicking there. Maybe the whole Jonah Jackson thing really set them back a little bit. Not too much, but uh, for that I understand in the fourth round. At this point, it's kind of like you can't go get a cornerback that you wanted just to fit a need. You don't want to you don't want to get in trouble to reach there because you didn't get the cornerback in the second or third round. This in the fourth round, obviously we've seen the Rams make their money on day 3, get the talent. If Hunter's that guy, go ahead. I'm okay with it. I give him a B. I know Ferguson and Stewart I wasn't too high on, but this one felt okay to me.
No, I this was my second favorite pick out of the six, and the reason I like this one, as you said, he's gonna be. We know that Kyron Williams is good in short yardage situations. I mean, he's been a great guy in terms of giving them the ball down in the goal line and scoring.
Yeah.
Where they both struggle, as you mentioned, is the fact that they're not home run hitters. They always end up getting caught like 20 yards. Like that was my biggest issue with Kyron Williams and Quorum is that they would break a run and they would get caught like 15 yards down the field instead of breaking it. Harquez Hunter is gonna be a guy that can break runs. He had one of the best percentage in terms of that's the one thing that I was impressed with. Like this dude is a home run hitter, and so for them to get this, like I said, running back, I have no issue, especially when, hey, we know that they've kind of learned their lesson after the whole Todd Gurley situation. I doubt they're
Yeah.
going to pay, Kyron Williams. So why not load up on another running back and see what you can get and take another shot at it? This one I had no issues with because at this point in the fourth round, this is when you want to start drafting running back. So this was my second favorite pick of the draft class.
Yeah, and I don't know what it means for Blake Corum. I'm sure they still want Kyron Williams back. If you got Hunter and Kyron Williams as a 1-2, they'll take that all day. But it does put pressure on Blake Corum, and it's never a bad thing to have a competition at a certain position. So go ahead and duke it out and fight for snaps. That's always kind of a good thing to raise the competition level. So you're right, Vic. Like he does have kind of a chisel physique where he's kind of this big body running back, but he has some juice. He has an extra gear, and they do need that. Like it's weird. It's very hard to describe Kyron Williams because he doesn't have that big body where he does seem to be a goal line guy, but he gets the touchdowns right. He makes it
Yeah.
work. He's also very shifty. He can move, which makes you think he's athletic, but he doesn't have that extra gear. So Kyrie Williams he's a very unique player where he does everything. Well, he does the pass blocking very well, but
Oh yeah.
he does a lot of things very well. But besides the pass blocking, there's not really something that's very elite, and he kind of has some limitations. But he's a very good all around running back. It's just it's kind of like James Cook with the Bills, right? Like he's a good running back, but you're not gonna pay that guy $15 million per year. I don't know what Kyrie Williams want. I'm not trying to compare him to James Cook, but there is kind of the like, yeah, we won't go that far with this guy, and this gives you a little more leverage right there.
Yeah, and I mean he's got the fumble issues too,
That too,
Gilbert.
yeah.
So that's not going to help his cause. I just wanted to get to some of these comments. Angel says, "What's up, guys? Good to see Angel on here." And Delbert says, "Hola, compas. I'm back for this go around. All speculation with a long way to go. Linebackers address athletes to keep improved special teams, which that's a great point by him. Like we'll get into the rest of this draft class." Because some of these guys will play a lot of special teams. And then one more set, he says, disappointed in the O line. Maybe
hmm
free agency will help, but you're kind of going at the bottom of the barrel at this point.
Yeah, I'm with you, Delbert, especially on the offensive line. Havenstein had procedures, right? I think is it a shoulder? I forget what injury he's
No, he
dealing
had
with.
both of his shoulders
Oh yeah,
clean. Yeah.
both of them. He's older. He's already missed time. And who's your backup tackle? Is it still?
No, Joe Nobleman's gone,
Oh
Gilbert.
yeah, okay,
So we can't go.
okay.
He can't be our whipping boy
Yeah, I was gonna
anymore.
say I've been away for a bit, so I haven't done my research on the number two,
Yeah.
number three players. But yeah, you don't have probably a lot of options there in case he gets hurt. They resign Alaric Jackson, and then I can't figure out what the Steve Avila situation is gonna be. Is he gonna be a guard?
It
Is he
looks
gonna
like
be a
he's gonna
center?
play left guard. I mean,
He was
and then
good there.
and then it's gonna be. I guess there's gonna be competition for the
That's the
center
problem.
between, yeah,
Like
Bo Limmer and
wherever you put Avila, the other person is going to be the weak one. And Bo Limmer was Servo was so bold. There you go.
yeah,
But he wasn't like a guy you wanted to guarantee a spot for a starting lineup, right? And then Coleman
yeah,
Shelton was good a couple of years ago, but he was very bad with the Bears. But then
yeah,
again, you play with the Bears, maybe you suck
yeah,
as a blocker. That's the thing over there. And then obviously, there's other players in the mix too, but there's hole. I just mentioned two or three holes right there, and I don't feel good about it. So I'm with you, Dobert.
yeah. Next selection was in the fifth round. I was Ohio State defensive lineman Ty Hamilton. So another big guy, which they really need. As I said, they need some run stoppers. So I it wasn't I thought it was okay pick, but I felt like you could have gone earlier in the draft and picked up a defensive tackle. I just think at this point you're just taking a flyer and hoping that you hit on it.
Yeah, from our conversation of the Rams operating like they're a player or two away, if they would have operated that way for a run stopper, I would have been okay with it because that's
Yeah,
probably if you address that need. Now I'm starting to think of, well, okay, you're a legitimate Super Bowl contender. Like, but some people disagree with me. That's okay. I get it. They're a talented
hmm
team. People really believe in Sean McVay. They came close to beating the Eagles. So to me, they still feel like a divisional round team. They feel like, hey, don't count out the Lions just yet. It's because they got beaten by the Commanders. The Eagles lost some people. They're gonna reload. Maybe the Commanders could take a step forward or a step back. That's kind of a tricky one there. But they still feel like they're a top four team in the conference, but not top two. But if they would have operated as this, we're very good mindset. If they would have drafted the other defensive tackle from Ohio State that went to the Detroit Lions, I think it's Talik Williams. He was the best run stopper in this defensive tackle class, and you don't really go for specialists in the first round, like run stoppers. You get them, maybe day two. You want a little more pass rush. You want people who are a little more well rounded as an interior defensive lineman. But
Yep.
the Lions have a good roster. They need more specialists to make a good roster even better. And they also drafted Leo McNeil not too long ago, so they kind of know that type. And they always go for the mean dudes, the violent, physical guys. So Talik Williams fit a lot of that. That's the guy they could have got at number 26. I would have taken that. I'm like, that's great. Mean dude, nasty, physical. You're missing that element on a team loaded with pass rushers. Go do the dirty work. Go be the big nose tackle. Go ahead and do that at number 26. But again, they got the first round pick. I can't keep talking about that. So I'll give it a B grade here. You still got another guy from Ohio State. I don't. He might not be as good as teammate in college, but also a big dude. I think a very good with stopping the run. And I know he's a fifth round talent or fifth round pick. But this team knows how to pick fifth rounders, right? Puka
Yep.
Nakua. So I'll give him the benefit of doubt
Yeah.
here. I'll give him a
It's true.
B. But I'm with you, Victor. They could have handled this position a lot sooner. But again, good track record for this team here to get talent on day three. We've been much nicer with day three players in this
Yeah.
podcast here. But Ty Hamilton, from the research I've done and the scouting report, he could help against the run. Maybe be a backup to Puna forward, or maybe eventually be a starter. That's tough to tell right now. Uh, but yeah, if they would have got a run stopper earlier, that would have been better. But they got him right here.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna knock them. I mean, they traded up for all these three selections, which was Hunter, Hamilton, and then the next one we're gonna get to Gilbert, and this is my favorite pick of the whole draft for them, and this is inside linebacker from Ole Miss, Chris Paul Jr. Now, I was trying to see if he was related to Chris Paul, the basketball player, but he's not. This was my favorite pick from this whole one. You get a guy in that which I the biggest surprise for this pick, Gilbert. One of the things that the Rams are known for is that they don't go after freakish guys, right? Like guys that score really well in terms of like their fitness and all that. Well, he does here and he fits a need. And I feel like I could see Chris Paul Jr. being the starter day one just because of what he did at Ole Miss, and I feel like he fits into what they want to do defensively, and he gives them a legit guy. Part of the problem that you see with linebackers is they fall because it's not a position that people like to draft up. And as we saw, I think one linebacker went in the first round. I think a couple linebackers went in the second round. So for them to be able to trade up, and there was a reason why they traded up in the fifth round to go get Chris Paul Jr. was because they really liked how good he was, and so this is my favorite one, and so this is the one I was like, okay, I'll forgive them for a lot of these first couple selections because this is the one that I thought you waited to the fifth round to go and get your linebacker, but you got a good one.
Yeah, I like it. I'm not as high as you on this pick. I think,
Yeah.
Hunter and Hamilton, maybe that's the better ones that I like for me. I'll give
Hmm.
it a B minus. It's just my concern is he's a smaller linebacker. And again, when you're trying to stop the run and be physical downhill, you need more
Yeah.
size. You need to be a little more
Right.
bulky. He doesn't really do that for you. Maybe he's a very good sideline to sideline playmaker, and then there's nothing wrong with that. That's good. And also, I'm a little concerned. This could be kind of just maybe a little bit of a reach here, but he got to play behind some very good players at Ole Miss. Walter
Yeah.
Nolan, going number 16 to the Cardinals. I think is it Princely? I don't want to butcher his last name. The edge
I
rusher
know what you're talking
went to
about.
the
Yeah.
Panthers in the second round. So was his life made easier playing behind those guys, NFL caliber players that went in the first two rounds, or did he do his part like Ole Miss? I didn't watch a lot of Ole Miss football, so I'm not gonna say. That, but it could be something too. And he's a smaller guy. It's gonna like you mentioned, he has a path to starting. You know, you got Omar Spades there to compete with, and a lot of people want to compare him to, or at least call him the Ernest Jones replacement.
Yeah.
But Ernest Jones was drafted in the third round. This is the fifth round too. I get it. The Rams know how to pick fifth rounders, but talent, size, all that. Why don't you get the linebacker in the third round? If you're not going to value them in the first round, I would like for them to get that linebacker sooner. Again, when I see smaller linebacker, it's kind of like you tried the smaller thing. It's not going to really work for you. But hey, again, this is where the team makes their money, and day three, I'll give it a B minus because if it's a need, I'm just not sure they got the right guy.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. But like this one was the one that just kind of like, okay, out of all the whole draft class, like like I said, the taking care of linebacker, which
Mhm.
they've needed for a while, and then I really like the Harquest Hunter pick. So those were my top two, and then our last selection here for the Rams. I hope it's the wide receiver from Pitt, Kanata Munfield. I hope I'm saying that right. And I haven't heard a lot of this pick, so I'm gonna leave it up to you in terms of if you've heard anything. I honestly don't have a great thing to say, or I don't want to lie to people and say, yeah,
Yeah,
like I've done all my research on him. I still got to get into it, but it's a seventh round pick, and you never know. I mean, he
yeah,
could compete for special teams, and this is where having someone having them bring him in and competing for special teams. I think that's somewhere where you
yeah.
can get on the field.
He kind of fits a type for the Rams here. A very consistent playmaker, one that's gonna maybe do some of the dirty work. Good route runner, and the production at Pitt. I think in the 3 years he was a starter, he was pretty much reliable in many areas, especially with the route running. Gets open very quickly, good hands. So in terms of that, where that's the way Puka Nakua came into his role. Like he was just reliable, good hands, knew where to be, embraced the dirty role. I'm not trying to compare him to Puka Nakua, but that's kind of like the skill set that he had. He's kind of nothing too flashy, doesn't have an elite trait, but just somehow it seems to be in the right spot. Seems to pick up the playbook very well. Great route runner. So he's gonna be one of these kind of lunch pail, hard hat kind of guys. Why not? He can help you out on special teams too. Maybe as a number three wide receiver. It's a seventh round pick. It's going to be very difficult, but there is somewhat of a path there to potentially be a starter. Like it's not gonna be like I get it. They paid Tutu Atwell a bunch of money to be the number three, but can he keep the job? Who knows? There's going to be injuries in the NFL. Uh, I'm blanking on the guys. Jordan Whittington's the guy from
Yeah,
last year,
Winston.
so he could be another options too. Not option. So hey, if Montfield is very consistent and a great route runner and likes to do the dirty work, he could find the path on this team too.
Yeah, and I could see. I was just gonna say Jordan Whittington, like Puka Nakua, Jordan Whittington, and then now Munfield. Like they have a specific type, and those
Mhm,
all now the production might not be there in terms of you're not gonna get the same production from Puka that you're gonna get from Jordan to now Kanata, but they have it's the same kind
mhm,
of type of guys that they like to have on this team. So the more of those guys that you have that can do the dirty work, because as we said with Devontae Adams, we don't know if he's going to want to do all that, and that's okay. I mean, look, you brought him in to be your he's your 1A or 1B, I should say, to Puka Nakua, and so he's gonna fill that role where when you need a big catch on third down, he's gonna get it for you, and he's gonna be able to separate even on short yardage. So that's that. But having guys like Kanata is gonna be huge for them. But yeah, like in terms of this class, Gilbert, six players. This matches the smallest in franchise history. The
mm,
Rams also made six picks in 2016 when they gave up four picks to go get Jared Goff at number one in 1997, and when they traded three picks to get Orlando Pace at number one. So whenever they've traded up, they traded up three times in this draft to go get Hunter, Hamilton, and Paul. So as I said, that was the biggest thing. My biggest takeaway from the press conference was the fact that they're very satisfied with their roster, and that's why they went after certain guys. And this was a big reason why they kept this class small, because they they feel like ready to compete for a Super Bowl. You and I
Yeah,
don't feel that way. There's a lot of positions that we feel that they need to fill, but
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
in terms of the whole class, Gilbert, how are you feeling?
And I haven't given a grade to Mumfield here, and I'll
Yeah,
give it
go ahead.
another, B minus. I would like to see more of a burner, stretch the field kind of type, and obviously you got your big X and Devontae Adams, and you kind of got the guy who moves all around and Puka Nakua. And yeah, Tutu Atwell has that position. He's probably gonna be safe again when it comes to being the speedster. No one's gonna challenge him in that. So
Yeah,
I kind of wanted maybe more of an athlete, but like you mentioned, Vic, and I mentioned too, like they have a type there with the workman like approach at wide receiver. They have maybe, one thing, and I'll shout out my colleague Connor Orr for pointing this out. A lot of these teams, and I was noticing, but I didn't really put it together until he wrote about it. A lot of these teams in this draft really were favoring their strengths. They wanted to make their strengths an elite strength, and they wanted to put the teams are playing in difficult positions to say, how do we counter with that? How do we match up with that? Make them overthink. So the Rams were doing that with the pass rushers, or doing that with their wide receivers, or kind of making a strength something that is going to a different level. So I can't knock that too much, but obviously there were some holes here, and yeah, you were like kind of more of a speedster in Munfield. But the after the draft concluded and on Saturday, I gave it a C because it's just not a lot of the roster for 2025. I felt like still needs a lot of work. Had some concerns with the first pick in Ferguson, so I went with the C. Maybe thinking about it's a little harsh. I gave a bunch of B's and C pluses in this for this class, so maybe it's more of a B minus, C plus. I want to give them the benefit of the doubt for getting a lot of draft picks correct. So I'll bump it up to a B minus for this show. Why not? I love the first round pick, but if we're putting the first round pick aside, and we're focusing more on this class, that's where I really was feeling more like a C. And a lot of people in different publications gave him a higher grade because of the first round pick.
yep,
To me, it's kind of like that's not doing anything for you. That's for next year. When we rate the class next year and we see what that pick is, that's where the grade comes in. To me, I took it away. I guess for the show here, I'll add it, and I feel better about the class. Maybe for, like again, Ferguson might be the better choice here. He's a player that maybe McVay envisions to be part of the 11 personnel that fits him in a scheme. That's things we gotta kind of take into account. And there's a team like the Detroit Lions, man. Like I learned my lesson a couple of years ago when they knocked them on Gibbs and Jack Campbell, and they kind of had a very unique draft class, but they got their own way of doing it. And even this
yeah,
year, it was very like I told you about the run stopper from Ohio State. The first round, okay, if it's the Dan Campbell way, you want this guy Isaac Tesla, who nobody heard of, but he's like kind of an Amon-Ra St. Brown type. In the third round, okay, go ahead and do it. We got to stop paying attention to the draft boards of Mel Kiper and Daniel
yeah.
Jeremiah and
Thank
what the
you.
internet says. So I want to always favor the Rams for what they do in their way. It's just the linebacker thing is kind of driving me crazy when you
Yes,
give up 200 yards. So that's why my grade is not as high as other people too.
yeah, and that's one thing I'll never criticize them for because a lot of people get fixated on mock drafts. And look, you and I, we watch NFL football. We don't watch college football. Yeah, we'll watch it at the end of the season and stuff like that. So we're relying on people to let us know what's going on. And so you know, there's a reason why they have scouts. They have scouts to be able to be there and be able to see these guys and kind of grind the tape. And the Rams know what kind of players they like. So for that reason, I'm not gonna. My biggest criticism for this draft class is the fact that you have a lot of holes on defense that you need to shore up. And when you say that you're a couple players away or that you feel good about your roster, that's when I kind of have a problem with it. And so that's the only issue. But you're right. And I was gonna ask you just before we have a couple comments on here that I want to get to. How much do you think and I don't know how much he was a part of the draft process before he got hired, but losing James Gladstone to the Jaguars, how much of a impact do you think he had? Because if there was a couple of times where he traded in front of the Rams, and he probably knew what kind of players they wanted to get. So there's also that, and that probably also was what triggered the Rams to move up a couple of times to be able to make sure they got their guys.
Yeah, I'm sure it has something to do with it, and there's a reason why Liam Cohen picked them. He worked with he was with the Rams. He got to see what James Gladstone was doing, and they like. Let's keep it real. It's going to be Liam Cohen's team at the end of the day because the
Yeah.
Jaguars just really wanted him that bad, where he got to pick his own GM. So he still has a say there, but to be working with the Rams, he was with Collins was with the Rams multiple times, and he knows what a good executive is and looks like. So to pick him out, a younger guy too. I don't know if that's because he wants to be the main guy and have a younger guy with less experience keeps him in line. That could be it too. I'm not trying to speculate too much, but uh, he did have an impressive, first draft class. I didn't pay attention to the Jaguars too much because I didn't have the AFC, but I love the move for Travis Hunter. Like, go get your guy because I bet you Leon Cohen kept saying, "I want offense. I'm offensive minded," and he's probably saying, "Well, we need defense. Here's a guy who can do a little bit of everything." So that tells me he's focused on all the holes on the roster. So yeah, I'm sure maybe some of these Rams players or Rams targeted players went to Jacksonville, but that kind of happens everywhere, right? You got
Yep.
players, obviously from LaFleur to Minnesota with O'Connell. It's just all over the place here. The Lions are Brad Holmes too. So the Rams keep doing it. They keep finding. That's why I do respect when they think outside the box because they have to
Mhm.
be a step ahead. People know what they do. People know their moves, and
That's why
maybe
they don't show up to the combine too.
that too, and maybe they're kind of maybe harping a little too much on edge rusher and linebacker, sorry, wide receiver, or maybe they're saying, you know what, people have figured us out. We're gonna keep making our strength a better strength, and maybe that's their thing. I don't know, Vic, because that has something to do with it. Because a lot of people know their intel and what they do well. That maybe you don't know how to change. Maybe you don't know how to have a different system. So you say, "F it, we'll do what we do well. We'll keep getting pass rushers and wide receivers and skill players and try beating us with our best on best." That's never a bad approach. It's just for some reason it's not going to be linebacker. Cornerbacks. They don't do as bad with cornerback, but they need more help as a shutdown cornerback. They have a lot of guys who are just guys, or they feel like they fit their role. They know how to play the system, but they don't have elite talent there. And they're kind of neglecting offensive line, but they took their swing last year with Jonah Jackson. And going off of Joe Harding's comment here with Isaac Tesla, who I was supposed to grade, or I was in charge of grading that pick, and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And I started doing research on Isaac Tesla, and I'm like, oh, this guy's very intriguing. He's a big dude who could play the slot inside outside, but also very athletic, reliable hands, fast. But then you look at his numbers in college, he had like 20 catches last year. I'm like, what the hell is that? Like, he wasn't even playing at a big time program a couple of years ago. But that's the thing. You got to put numbers aside sometimes in college.
Yeah.
You got to trust the tape, trust your department. And if the Rams were in on Tesla, Brad Holmes was probably saying, "Why are the Rams doing research on Tesla?" And they took him in the third round. That's why. And brings up a good point. If the Rams are talking to Isaac Tesla, and all the draft boards are saying this guy's a seventh round pick or a sixth round pick, not to the Lions because somebody wanted him. So it's all
Yeah.
about kind of secrecy at this time of year too.
Yeah, and I was trying to remember, there was a couple years ago, Gilbert. I'm glad because sometimes when you're talking and it like it computes in my head, and I just remember the fact that I remember there was a lineman that the Rams had looked at, and I remember New England went and drafted him in the first round, and I remember McVay was like,
Uh-huh.
"Oh, that's a guy we talked to, and we were gonna look at in the third round or the fourth round." This is what ends up happening, and it's a great point by Joe there to bring it up too. Like I said, I'm not criticizing the fact that as you said, this is why we go. I like the conversation that we end up having because by the end of it, we can kind of figure out the fact that hey, one of the teams that I like their approach is the Ravens. The Ravens will always take the best player available, but they will also take they're not afraid to take a position that they're strong at, which is what the Rams did in this draft. And so for that, I commend them. But the fact that there's still, I go back and I'll keep saying it. My biggest, the thing that kind of like that made me a little bit upset was like I don't need to be gaslit in terms of the fact that like I understand where you guys are coming from, but the fact that you're saying that hey, we're happy with our roster, and that's the reason why we took 6 picks was a little bit of a like, come on, like we saw what happened in that game against the Eagles. yeah, you came within one play, but there were still a lot of deficiencies. I just wish they focus more on defense because they are one of the I think they're the cheapest organization in terms of what they pay for their defense. And eventually you're gonna have to pay for it because guys like Kobe Turner, and the rest of that defense. And then one thing that you brought up that you said they're just another guy. And, they're a bunch of. The problem is that your linebacking crew and your secondary are just just guys. Like they're not game breakers, and you need more of those in your back seven.
Yeah,
Or
and we gotta get going, but one thing we
yeah,
haven't really talked about is, and Leslie's not gonna talk about this because it's a touchy or a sensitive topic. Like, maybe he's going all in on this whole our roster is very good, and that's why you got a first round pick for next year, is because you can't say we have an extra first rounder for next year to potentially make a move for a quarterback. This draft class sucks here. We have no interest in it, which that's what they said, by the way. I would not
yeah,
verbally, their
yes,
actions said it. They
yes,
did not have any interest in this draft class. All the moves they wanted to do was to get a skill player in the top 10 or in the back end of the first round. They had no interest in this quarterback class, which I don't blame them. I get it. It wasn't the best. But now you have that extra pick for a better class next year. And again, you can't keep doing 1 year contracts with Matthew Stafford. At some point, you need to move on. And the Rams could kind of kick in the can, for the next year. And I kept telling them they need some kind of plan to finally think about Matthew Stafford when he retires or gets traded or whatever. This is part of the plan. This is the one that
yes,
gets the wheels in the motion because you have the 2 first round picks for next year. They're not going to say that right now, but that's why you take that trade offer because quarterback is the most important position, and you don't want the bottom to fall out when Stafford goes somewhere else. So you have flexibility. It's just a custom players for this year, I think,
yeah,
but they're not in the best spot to say. Like, I'm not even sure, Vic, if they're in the spot where the Vikings are. Like their roster is better overall. Maybe they beat the crap out of the Vikings, so maybe I could be wrong there. Uh, but like the Lions, teams like, or even the Ravens to an
yeah. The
extent,
Packers, who they
Packers.
can't keep, they can't beat during the regular
The
season.
Packers are weird. Like they have
Yes,
very little holes, but they don't have enough blue chip players to me. They're kind of
yes,
a hole, but I get it. They're a well balanced roster, but the Rams are not in a place where some of these teams that we talked about to say, yeah, we just need 4 or 5 picks. They're not really there. But the quarterback thing, man, I think it's such a big deal, and they're not going to talk about it.
yeah, and it's true. We have a comment here from All Good Things says Chris Paul Jr. beats out Jahad Campbell on
Oh,
all the metrics, and they both play in the same conference. Best value at the spot, and like I said, that there was reasons why I like this pick a lot. We'll see if that. I mean, both of those guys we're gonna look at because these teams are gonna face each other, and we're gonna see which one does better. I can't wait to see. I can tell you this. I said it. The one thing I'll take away from this draft class is that Chris Paul Jr. is gonna start right day one. For
yeah,
I just feel that way, but
but
we'll
it's a
see if
fifth,
that
it's a fifth
happens.
round pick. It's a thing. It's like
Yeah,
it's a big gamble, but yeah,
I
I
know.
get it.
We'll see, but
I'm with you
we
though.
saw it with Puka. Last thing, Gilbert. You kind of got into it, but what will it mean for the Rams to kind of have those 2 first round picks in 2026?
Yeah, I should have remembered the rundown. We're going to get to it, but it means a lot because it does give you the flexibility to, what do you do with quarterback? I'm not saying it's gonna be for sure thing where Stafford's not gonna be around, but say he is around and maybe he's still playing well, and now you could really get some good players to help you out at the tackle spots. Rob Havenstein is not gonna be around. Uh, sometimes when you have the 2 first round picks, like you're able to get the safe player, which is usually like a lineman. Like, cool, we need that guy, but you want to have a creative player, like like a skill player, a running back, or a tight end, or wide receiver, or even like a safety, the one that the Seahawks took. You want that second round pick to kind of make, okay, cool. Now we can see what we could get here and just say, F it. We'll take them right here. We got 2. Why not? But it's really more about the quarterback position. I have not done my research on the quarterback position for next year. Obviously, Archie Manning might be the cream of
Yeah,
the crop there.
everybody keeps saying, "Oh, the quarterback class is going to be way better next year." Yeah, like Lenora Sellers is another guy but we don't know. I mean, we just don't know. So sorry. I
Even this
mean,
year, people kept saying, or going into the football season,
yeah,
Carson Beck, what the hell did he
yeah,
do?
right,
He's gone to Miami now, or he lost a girlfriend, but
yeah,
nobody
and
knew
two
about Cam Ward.
Lamborghinis, I think.
Yeah,
I think.
yes, yeah, he got robbed.
Uh,
And then his ex girlfriend saying he's not a good person. Anyways,
yeah,
but that kind of shows you it could really change
yeah,
real quickly. Quinn Ewers was supposed to be a top pick,
yeah,
and now he was a seventh round pick to the Miami Dolphins. So we don't know who's going to emerge, but it helps having that extra first round pick in your back pocket. And let's keep it real, the Falcons did him a favor. Again,
yep,
I'm very high on James Pierce Jr. Maybe the Rams could have benefited from a player like that, but they're set at edge rusher. They're okay.
yeah,
So you take that first round pick, but yeah. So to me, they had to do it. I think it probably just threw a wrench into their whole plan. Like, oh crap! All right, let's take it. We'll figure it out.
yeah.
But you can't say, yeah, we're thinking about quarterback for 2026.
Yeah, and I think I think what it means for me is the fact that you can go after an offensive lineman. Like if we know that Rob Havenstein is at the end of his career, you can go and get an offensive lineman in the draft. You should have be able to get a good one in the first round next year. So I understand that everybody's fixated on the quarterback because that's the number one position, but you know, we'll see what happens. We still need to get to 2026, but it's great that they have those two first round picks, Gilbert. So we'll get to it. We have one last thing here from Delbert. He wants to know who do you got
Yeah.
this weekend, Ryan or Rolly, Ramirez or Haney?
Yeah, I think for the first time, like I really care about boxing. I know I've been on paternity leave, so I haven't really watched. I've been watching a lot of fights in general. I haven't really been in tune with the fight game, but for once, I finally care about a Saturday lineup. And it's not like they're the best fights, but they could be, fun, exciting fights here. Like Ryan and Rolly, like I think Ryan Garcia is gonna win, but Rolly comes to fight and he throws a good a nasty punch. He doesn't have a good chin, but okay, I'll go with Garcia. Uh, Ramirez Haney could be kind of a snooze fest, but they're both I think styles make fight. Haney is more of a technician, slow it down. Ramirez doesn't have a lot of pop. He's going to throw a bunch of punches and bunches. He's a good volume puncher, so maybe Haney could figure him out. So it'd be a good fight too. So give me Haney to bounce back.
Yeah, Haney will probably that one's going the distance, right? Like there's no
Oh yeah,
way.
none
Yeah.
of them have a good power. The Ryan and Rolly might end like in the fifth, sixth round.
One here for Big, I want to say his name is Big Ron Mass. It says, "Why do people keep bringing up Archman? He hadn't done anything. Don't fall for
Yeah,
the hype." Yeah,
yeah, good point. You never like
yeah,
even like Quinn Ewers or Carson Beck. You just never know. With him, it's more maybe it's the name, but
yep.
people trying to
Well, we saw
say
what
like
happened with Shador Sanders. So
yeah,
I
that
mean,
too. But I guess with Arch Manning, it's kind of like with Trevor Lawrence, where he has a skill set. Nobody really cares what he does in college. Maybe that could be the thing with him,
uh,
but that's also a red flag. But I want to watch him for a full season. That's a good point too.
yeah, one last one here from All Good Things. If the Falcons turn out to be worse next year, it give us a number one pick.
Yeah,
So
that too.
we saw it
Yeah.
with the Panthers. We've seen, I mean, yeah. So you never know. That's why you take one of those first round pick. That's
Hmm.
what I said. I still, to me, the Rams won this draft the minute they traded and got a first round pick. Like I said, my whole issue with this draft was the fact that they said, "Hey, we're only a few players away," so we wanted to make sure that we only took a couple players. So, but we'll see what they do. As you pointed out, Gilbert, they've done a great job. They know the type of players that they like, and they're turning. They're building on strength. So that's where they went in this draft. They just decided, hey, while everybody just continues to go with best best need at the round that they pick, the Rams said, you know what, we're gonna make sure that we turn our strength into a bigger strength. So can't knock that. We've seen that they've done great in the middle rounds, but we'll see. Overall, you gave them a C grade, and now and then you bumped them up in this show to a B minus. So that's
Yeah.
great to see. But it's good to be back, Gilbert. We hope to give you guys more shows, more live shows. If you don't, just make sure that you are and subscribe, and you'll get those notifications for when we pre-record some videos for you guys.
Yeah, I know for the off season we don't do too much, especially this off season. But it was good to be back and talk about the draft. And I like this show because I get to really focus on the Rams and all their picks and their big picture and their upcoming season. So that's good. Willie Bowen says L.A. Rams kick butt and drafted names. Uh, yeah, I thought for a second I was gonna say kick butt of the 49ers. The 49ers, I didn't like their draft. I like the Seahawks a lot. The Cardinals could be boom or bust, but I like it. And who's the last team that I might remember? No, that was it, right?
Yep.
Yeah, the 49ers, yeah,
Seahawks,
they didn't
the
have the best
Seahawks,
draft.
49ers, and Cardinals.
But yeah, so for the most part, the Rams have proven me wrong many times. So we'll see what they do,
Yeah.
and I'll give them the benefit of the doubt to see what they have with this class here.
All right, it's time for us to go. So go ahead and Gilbert, go ahead and sign us off.
Yeah, thank you again for all the comments. Big Ron, all good things. Willie, uh, Delbert, Joe jumping in too. So hopefully we get to see a lot more names, new names too, as we get closer to the NFL season. Thank you, all good things. He says, "Welcome back, fellas, and looking forward to your shows."
We'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, on check out Compass on the Beat. I know we're not doing too much on House of Horns in the off season. Brian, do the rewind thing and check out the show. Leave me comments too. Leave Victor comments. Call me negative, call me spot on, or call me just right.
Yeah, we
Let
were
me know.
pretty negative at the beginning of this
Yeah,
show, so
but
just beware.
yeah, you know the Rams on day 3. That's when they shine.
Yep.
Victor Reed likes the linebacker. But yeah, check us out on Compass on the Beat. We have a lot of content there. And then you know what? Eventually, when training camp rolls around, we'll get into a good rhythm. We'll probably have some shows in the off season for like the off season program and mandatory mini camp. So we won't totally go away. But it was good to be back for this show because I had a bunch of thoughts I wanted to get off, and Victor did
Oh, we
as
have some
well.
more. I mean, we just got into the Rams today. We need to get into the whole NFL tomorrow, so I
Yeah,
can't
the
wait.
entire
Trust.
NFC West will probably be discussed tomorrow too. So keep it locked and loaded on Compass on the Beat. And yeah, so good House of Horn show. Thank you for people coming back. Good to see you, Brian, too. So let's get going. Ya nos vamos. Pues vámonos.